Hi, and welcome to MSc. In this video, we're going to be looking at interval notation. Now, interval notation is an alternative to set builder notation, which I covered in a previous video. And if you haven't seen that video yet, you should go and take a look at it first. This is a simplified and alternate version to set builder. Now, set builder is often the default that we'll use in a classroom or to answer a question, but interval notation is a useful shorthand. In interval notation, we're going to assume that the variable, usually x or y, but the variable is an element of the real numbers. So before in set builder, if you recall, we had to identify what set the number variable belonged to, right? We said x is an element of the real numbers, or x is an element of the integers. Here we make the assumption that it is going to be the real numbers. And we use rounded brackets, not set brackets. We use curved brackets when we want to exclude the number. So that would be used in situations where we have either the number is either less than or greater than the variable, depending. And we use square brackets when we want to include the number. So when we want to say something like is less than or equal to or greater than equal to. So let's get to an example here. And here we have a simple number line, and we have from -5 to 4. Notice that these are shaded and in dots, so that means it includes the numbers -5 and 4. So for interval notation, I look and say, okay, well, it includes it, which means we're going to use square brackets, and we'll say -5, comma, 4, and we'll close the bracket. And that's all we need to do, which is pretty nice, right? If we were going back to set builder as a review piece, we'd have to say the set of x such that x is an element of the real numbers, and then we'd have to state our restrictions here. So we know that the lower bound is 5, the upper bound is 4. We're going to close the set bracket. We have x in between, and we know that x has to be greater than or equal to -5, or less than or equal to +4. So again, these square brackets include the -5, and the 4. But you can see how much quicker interval notation is than set builder. But you can only use interval notation, in my class certainly, when you've been asked for it. Otherwise, the default has to still be set builder. So here's another example. And we can see, again, we have a filled in dot at 3, so it's going to include 3. And it goes all the way down, and we're going to assume that this keeps on going down to some negative infinity value. So the 3 is certainly included. So we're going to put 3, and we have a negative infinity value, and we're going to put that in because it just keeps on going for forever. But we can never actually get there. There's always a even smaller negative infinity value, if you want to think about it in terms of the number line, right? We can never actually get there. So we're going to use the rounded bracket. And again, this is important that we're going to always use this rounded bracket with infinities, right? So we're always rounded with infinity. And that can be plus or minus infinity. It'll still be that rounded bracket. If we were comparing this still to set builder, then we'd have x such that x is an element of the real numbers. And here, because we're going down to negative infinity, I don't really have any lower bound on this number, but I do have an upper bound. So we'd say x has to be less than or equal to 3 as a comparison piece. So remember, whenever you're dealing with an infinity value, it has to have that rounded bracket. Okay, we'll do one more example. And here I've preset this for us as the interval -3 to 2. I'll show you the set builder in a moment. If we go to draw this out, the -3 is included because it's a square bracket. The 2 is not included because it's a rounded bracket. So we're going to draw an open circle, and then we'll draw a line connecting. And so that is the interval that we're dealing with, and because it's interval notation, we assume that it's all the real numbers between -3 and 2. If I was comparing this now to set builder, then I would say, okay, well, we'll have the set of x such that x is an element of the real numbers, and we have our lower bound, and we have our upper bound, and we have x. Now, x has to be greater than or equal to -3, and it only has to be less than 2, not equal to 2, and that's how we'd write it. So interval notation is a lot more simplistic. It's easier to use. We have to remember the curved and square brackets and use those appropriately. And you should be able to do either set builder or interval notation for sets of numbers on number lines. And eventually we'll use both of these to define domain and ranges as well. Hopefully this short video has been helpful. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.